Okay, Don.
Everybody, please rise. Guard, present, park. Everybody, please join me in the pledge of allegiance. Guard, right shoulder, park. Post colors. Up to bird. Guard, dismiss.
Thank you all. Please be seated. Again, as Harry Durham said, we welcome you all to the mayoral debate for 2019. We encourage you to submit questions. If you've got a question, if you want to submit one, raise your hand. The scouts are around with paper and pens, and they will collect the question from you. Right now, we've got, I think, 2 questions. So it's going to be a very short evening, ladies and gentlemen, unless we get some more questions. So, it won't be that easy, by toss of the coin, it was determined that Mr. Gurman will give the first opening statement. Mr. Gurman? Here for that.
Well, good evening, and thank you, Mr. Stowe, for holding this event, and thank you all for coming. It's an honor to be here. I decided to run for mayor of our great city because I believe I have the skills, the knowledge, the experience, the wisdom, and vision to make this city amazing. I grew up here in Milford. I've been here for over 56 years. I graduated Milford High, which was right across the street, current Parsons building, and I received my master's from Sacred Heart University. I've owned businesses here in Milford for 35 years. I was in the health club, health and wellness business for 25 years, and I'm currently in the financial services arena, and I've been a financial advisor, I am a financial advisor for 10 years now, working with individuals and businesses. I've been serving on the Board of Aldermen for 10 years. I'm a member of the Milford Rotary, Milford Chamber, Milford BNI, and American Legion Post 196. Some of the things I'd like to accomplish with the city of Milford. I'm a huge advocate of health and wellness. Healthcare is our largest budget line item and is over $45 million a year. With the city being self-insured in regards to health insurance, I know we can save millions each year by focusing on prevention and better pharmacy management. Someone is taking a lot of money off the city of Milford, and that has to change. I'm all for a healthy and sustainable environment. We need to do more with recycling and energy efficiencies. I'm a huge supporter of the arts, entertainment, and tourism industries. It's fun, it brings people together, it attracts people and keeps people local, and it also drives a lot of revenue to the downtown and Milford areas. Beautification. I want a great looking town that will attract people and businesses. We have all the assets of an amazing city, 17 miles of shoreline, the downtown, the harbor, the rivers, and the parks and parsons. And we just need to take better care of them. And we need to pay attention to detail. And let's preserve our old trees. Trees add value to the property and to the town. And we've been losing way too many old trees in town. And I'm all for transparency. Transparency is the cornerstone of good government. As a taxpayer, I'm sure you want to know where your tax dollars are being spent. I would like to see a long-term plan and a long-term vision for Milford and the Milford school system. I support the police, fire, and public works, and the unions that support them. I am concerned with the business environment in Milford. I see businesses leaving. Just look around downtown. We have a lot of empty storefronts. As a business owner and financial consultant, a top priority of mine is to put in place a plan to attract and retain more good businesses. We need a thriving business community, and we need to fill these vacant spots. This will add to our grand list and keep our taxes down. And we need to fix our roads. There's a lot of roads that are being neglected throughout town. And we need to address our shoreline flooding issues. And we need to address the beach erosion. Milford has the most beach of any state, any town in the state, and we're losing our beaches every year, and we need to protect it. And finally, my goal is to continue to reduce taxes, not by cutting critical departments, but implementing serious cost-saving strategies. Again, as a long-time business owner, I see a lot of waste. So I have experience in business management, I have experience in finance, accounting, and insurance, expertise in healthcare and environment, construction, landscaping, and beautification. With my business background and my life experiences in the last 35 years and my government experience, I know we can do a better job. We can be more efficient without sacrificing services and value. Government needs to be transparent, and we need a long-term vision for a more sustainable future. Let's work hard together, and let's make Milford amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. German. Mr. Blake?
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming out tonight. Thank you for giving of your time. Thank you for being part of this important exercise of local democracy. A great big thank you to our moderator, Art Stowe, and the Plymouth Men's Club for hosting this debate, to the First Church for sponsoring this debate, and to the Boy Scouts for helping us out this evening. Troop 1 is celebrating 100 years in scouting this year. And they've never looked so good. Ladies and gentlemen, the job of mayor is all-consuming. It is all Milford all the time. There is something different every hour of every day. There are a lot of challenges, but it is a city that I love and a job that I work very hard at. And over the course of the last 8 years, we have seen tremendous successes. Successes from streamlining the way that our local city government operates, making things more efficient, making things more effective than ever before. And that has paid off with huge dividends. Right now, we are in the middle of a huge economic expansion, a tidal wave of new businesses coming into town. This last year alone, we had 465 new businesses make Milford home. Obviously, that's fantastic for our tax base. Milford now has the largest grand list in all of New Haven County and one of the largest in the state of Connecticut. And that's allowed us to leverage other economic opportunities. We've been able to invest a lot more in our public infrastructure. Over the course of the last 2 years, we have paved more miles of city street than ever before. Over 20 miles of street last year, over 20 miles of street this year. We've been able to build new recreational amenities, lots and lots of recreational amenities, from dogs parks to splash pads to pickleball courts to beachside bathrooms to new boardwalks to parks and playgrounds, and the list goes on and on and on. And we've done this all in a very fiscally responsible way. We've seen how the national credit rating agencies have upgraded our credit score. We are now a AAA bond rated community for the first time ever. That is fantastic too. But we've been able to do all of this together, and we've been able to do all of this while cutting taxes 4 consecutive years in a row. Back to back to back to back tax reductions. That's unprecedented. No other town or city in the state of Connecticut can boast that. And ladies and gentlemen, we've done that together, but there is still work to be done. Every time I go to a school and I speak to our students, every time a new business comes in and I welcome them, every time I meet with a local resident, I'm energized by all the things that we have yet to accomplish. So ladies and gentlemen, tonight you're going to hear our ideas, you're going to hear our positions on certain issues, and I suspect you may even hear some of our differences. But ladies and gentlemen, the one area that I know we will not differ is our love of this community, our commitment to the city of Milford. Again, thank you all for being here this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Blake. And thank you all for the dozens of questions I've received in the last 2 minutes. Okay. Our first question, there are several of them, and our first question, we start with Mr. Gurman. Many questions about controlling personnel costs, basically, healthcare costs, pension costs, underfunded pension concerns. What will you do to control the expenses in Milford for health care benefits and pension benefits and keep them properly funded? Mr. Gurman.
Thank you. Well, again, healthcare, that's a strong point of mine. I was in the healthcare business for 25 years, and there's a lot we can do with that. The city is self-insured, meaning every time somebody runs through the doctor emergency room, it comes right out directly out of our pocket. So there's a lot we can do to minimize those costs just by shifting to prevention and getting people healthier. I'm shocked that the private companies do this, and they've been doing this for years, and they save millions a year. But municipalities don't seem to put any time into it. There's a lot of ways we can save just by shifting the focus to keep people healthy. And also pharmacy benefits. The pharmacy companies are making a fortune off us, and there's different pharmacy management companies that can manage that and save a ton of money. And I've talked to several of them. And also, what was the other pensions?
Yes, pension benefits, basically personnel costs.
Okay. So pension benefits. So we've been underfunding our pension benefits the past few years, and if you look at the numbers, the overall percentage is decreasing. I think it's as short as 4 or 5 years ago, we were 125%. Now we're at 85% funded as far as pension. So we're going in the wrong direction there, so we do need to make some more contributions to that fund so that it stays 100% funded. So we're jeopardizing our future of our pension plan. And then personnel costs, and that's our biggest cost in the city, and it's always a struggle to keep personnel costs, but you got to keep all the departments lean and get rid of waste that you don't need. And if you have a lot of employees on the payroll or funding a lot of positions that aren't filled and you don't really need them, then get rid of them, save the taxpayers a lot of money. So those are my responses. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Blake.
Mr. Stowe, there was a lot marbled into that question. Would you mind repeating one more time?
As best as I can summarize. People are concerned about the personnel expenses for Milford, increasing healthcare costs, pension costs, and specifically underfunding of the pension. What can we do to correct these?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am a thrifty Connecticut Yankee. Everything we do is to streamline our local budget, but we do cover our costs. From healthcare, as an example, last year we put our healthcare administration out to RFP and we saved $2 million. If you look at how the bond rating agencies review a city's fiscal health, they look at things like pension funds, they look at things like healthcare contributions, they look at things like fund balance. And in each of those factors, the city of Milford was a shining example, and that's why the credit rating agencies upped our credit score. In terms of our pension funds, we are one of the examples of the most well-funded pensions in the state of Connecticut. If you look at our contributions, we have increased year over year since the fiscal crisis of 2008, the international fiscal crisis. Dan Gurman has been an alderman for the past 10 years. Over the course of the past 10 years, he has made 3 budget amendments. 2 were relatively de minimis. One was about lighting, and one was changing one city position from a union to a non-union position. The 3rd budget amendment over the course of a 10-year period was to reduce our pension contribution. I thought this was a terrible mistake. When I asked him, when the finance director asked him, why would we reduce our pension contribution by millions of dollars, there was really no response. It was reckless, it was not good governing, and luckily, the 14 other aldermen that were there that meeting all voted against that amendment. There was only one alderman that voted to reduce our pension contributions. And again, I think that wiser heads prevailed, and that's no longer the case from the following amendment, so I was happy to hear that. But ladies and gentlemen, we are a AAA bonded community. Our economic status is second to none.
Thank you. Response, Mr. Gurman.
Yeah, so I don't know where that number came from or where that vote came from. I'd like to see that because I don't remember that. So, yeah, I don't know where that came from.
Okay.
Thank you.
And again, these are facts. This was back in 2014, so it was a few years ago. But again, there was only 3 budget amendments that you made over the course of 10 years. So it was one of those 3.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Mr. Blake. Several questions about environmental concerns. The single-stream recycling program that we are on, and China has announced they no longer want to take single-stream and so forth. What's going to happen to the stuff, and is Milford prepared? What are we going to do about it? And let's leave it at that.
This has been a national crisis. The National Sword Initiative that China enacted back in 2017 has sent us all spinning across the country. They are no longer accepting 95% of the glass that they used to take. Obviously, they were our largest, far and away, secondary market for glass. We have to change the way that we recycle, period. The single-stream system that we use right now, that the state requires us by law to follow, has to be changed. We went from earning $20 a ton for each amount that we recycle to having to pay $75 a ton as of this last July 1st. And it has to change. I do see light at the end of the tunnel. There are secondary markets opening, not just in the state of Connecticut, but potentially even in Milford. There is a glass recycler that may be moving into town, so we are excited about that. But it is one of those huge hurdles that Milford is facing, and all other towns and cities across the state and the nation are facing right now. We are trying to reduce our carbon footprint in everything that we do, making sure that the next generation lives a healthier life. And we have done some things, even as of the last several months. We are now recycling our textiles. We teamed up with a local organization that recycles textiles at the curb. We are making $40 a ton for each ton that we bring in. And again, there is zero cost to the city of Milford. This is something that we've been able to do, again, one, to encourage recycling, but most importantly, we're able to reduce the tonnage that we have to pay towards solid waste. So that's the big incentive of us for this new textile recycling program.
Thank you. Mr. Kerman.
So sometimes we have to be forced to act, and as a country, we produce way too much waste. So just the simple R's like reduce, reuse, recycle, and refuse, and rethink. Those are all things you should keep in mind when you're either buying something or using something. We throw away way too much, so now it's costing us big time. But there's a lot of things we can do within the town. One specific thing I've been trying to get the public works to do is just put together put in a reuse center at the transfer station. There's a lot of stuff that gets thrown out that other people can use, and that costs us money every time. The tonnage increases, that we're paying a lot for that to travel down to Bridgeport and get burned. So the more we can reduce, the more we can reuse, the more we can recycle and refuse. So the way you shop and do things, there's a lot of things we can do out there. But Milford needs to do a lot more with that. There's a whole program that I tried to initiate years ago, but the mayor wasn't on board, and it was designed to force people really to reuse and recycle a lot more and keep things out of the waste stream. And we may have to revisit that in the future. So thank you.
Thank you. Response, Mr. Blake?
The program that Dan had mentioned that he was trying to initiate was a pay-as-you-throw. It would have required that every Milford citizen pay $2, $3, $4, $5 each time they used a bag. They would have to purchase bags. And again, Milford is a progressive city, but I think that was just not right for the community. I think that there's other ways to reduce the amount of solid waste and recycling. At this point, it actually would have harmed us because the cost of recycling at this point is a lot higher than the cost of our solid waste. The tipping fee for solid waste right now is $61 a ton, and the cost of recycling is $75 a ton. So we would have been hit hard on both sides of that. The individuals would have had to pay more, and the city would have had to pay the additional tipping fee as well.
Thank you. Response, Mr. German?
Yeah, unfortunately, the whole recycling market has collapsed, but that will turn around, I see, in the future. And the bags are fairly cheap, they're $1. But just as you see with the plastic bags going on right now, the state law that you pay 10 cents per plastic bag, nobody's taking plastic bags anymore. And if you've been in ShopRite before, when there was a gazillion yellow plastic bags, now there's none. So as simple as, a dime or a dollar, it changes people's habits and can make big changes just by simple little things. So yeah, unfortunately, the recycling market has collapsed, but something will happen with that. It has to eventually, and maybe we can revisit it then. So thank you.
Thank you. Next question, we start with Mr. German. What are your plans to improve the roads and infrastructure in Milford?
Great question. So we have a lot of roads in town, and some roads haven't been touched in 30, 40 years, and they're just in horrible shape, and there's some roads that get repaved every, 5 or 10 years. But we really need to put a schedule together, and a schedule that people can kind of take a look at and see where they are on the schedule, as far as what gets done, where, when and where, so they have an idea, instead of saying, yeah, you're on the list, and then years go by. But we do really need to attack a lot of these roads, especially along the shoreline. We just had a Folks on Spokes bike ride this weekend, and went all along the shore in Milford and West Haven and up the coast. But there's a lot of shoreline roads that are just horrible, and those are your big taxpayers, are the shoreline. So those really need to be cleaned up for the walkers, the runners, the bikers, and they need to be smooth so that people aren't, at risk of, blowing out a tire or getting seriously hurt. But we really need to have a plan, an overall plan so we can attack this problem head on. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Blake?
There is no bigger issue in local city government than paving the roads and plowing our streets and maintaining our infrastructure. And I think we've done a tremendous job about that. Milford has over 1,200 local city streets. However, we have 8,000 catch basins. We do have a very sophisticated asphalt management program where we have documented the condition of each road, the year each road was last paved, and we have a schedule. If you go to the Public Works website, you can see the schedule for the paving in 2019. So we are doing that already, but nobody, no matter if you live in Milford or Kalamazoo, nobody is ever going to be satisfied with the condition of the roads in their town. It's one of the detriments of local city government, but we are doing a fantastic job. As I said, we have paved more miles of local city streets than ever before. Our Public Works Department is second to none. They have done a huge amount of work all across the city, not just on our roads, but on our parks and our beaches, and maintaining all of our local infrastructure so that we can really be proud of this community.
Thank you. Follow-up, Mr. Berman.
I guess just the schedule on the Public Works or on the city website, and I checked about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I could not find it, so I had to call the Public Works director, and he had made me a copy of a handwritten schedule that was just for this month. So that's hard for people to kind of follow, but I'll double check, maybe I missed it.
Thank you. Follow-up, Mr. Blake.
Just that, I think our Public Works has done a fantastic job. If you look at the condition of our buildings, if you look at the condition of our beaches, if you look at the new parks that are going up across town, the Recreation Department, the 150 people that work for our Public Works, they work hard each and every day. And again, I can't take anything away from all the good work that they do to make sure Milford is a place that we can all be proud of.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Mr. Blake. A question about historic properties in town, specifically the Baldwin House up on Prospect Street. There seems to be a constant battle going on between trying to protect and preserve Milford's past and build Milford for the future. How can we do both of them?
It's a constant struggle to make sure that we adhere to the New England culture, our history, at the same time we're building for a 21st century universe. I am a student of history, specifically Milford history. I used to teach high school history courses. There's no one who appreciates our history more than myself. One of the things that I did back when I was on the Board of Aldermen as chair is we implemented a new demolition delay ordinance, really strengthening our ability to save and preserve a lot of the structures. A couple of years ago, there was new statewide legislation, enabling legislation that allowed us to enact a local preservation commission. We were one of the only communities in the state of Connecticut that took this enabling legislation and adopted a local commission, in large part thanks to Mr. Stowe and Mrs. Kramer and Mr. Platt, who spearheaded that effort. But since we have that, we are now allowed to protect those homes, those historic properties on the national and the state register. And to your point about 67 Prospect Street, if we did not enact that commission, 67 Prospect Street would now be dozens and dozens of residential units. That history, our founding fathers, where Peter Prudence was buried, allegedly, that would now be housing units, but for the fact that this new Historic Preservation Commission was enacted. Serendipitously, tomorrow I am going to the Derby Courthouse in front of Judge Timer for a pretrial, again, to argue vigorously the city's case to make sure that that preservation continues.
Thank you. Mr. Gurman.
So preserving our past is a strong passion of mine. Milford goes back 1639. And we've lost a lot of beautiful old houses. And we've lost a lot to 8-30G affordable housing. That's been a boom the last 8 years. We finally got a temporary moratorium to stop all that housing development, but there's a lot of damage that's already been done. But we need to fight for every, old house that we have in town. I was a strong supporter of the Preservation Trust, and we will continue to do that to preserve the past of Milford and the quaint old structures that Milford has.
Thank you. Follow-up, Mr. Blake?
The issue of 8-30G, which Chris brought up, that is another huge win for the city of Milford. The moratorium that we were able to achieve, it wasn't easily achieved. We literally went house to house, making sure that we had documented each unit to make sure that we got all the points. I have to give our legislative delegation huge credit for the work that they did lobbying and advocating for changes in that law. Specifically, Senator Gail Salzberg, or former Senator Gail Salzberg, who chaired the Housing Committee that made it all happen. But not for the good work of us lobbying every single legislature in the House and the Senate, and then overriding the governor's veto, and then working hard to make sure that we documented and canvassed across the entire city. We would not have achieved this moratorium. It was a huge, heavy lift. Our local city departments deserve great kudos. Our community development office, our legal team, our DPLU. We had so many people that put in so much time to make sure that this was happening. And it's great when success happens. We are now able to get, once again, control of our own planning destiny, push back against overdevelopment, and have exclusive control of our planning development.
Thank you. Follow-up, Mr. Berman? Okay. Next question, we seem to have several coming in. I think somebody changing their handwriting. Questions about the planning and zoning approval of digital light billboards in Milford. What is your view on that? I'm sorry, we'll start with Mr. German on this one. Apologies.
I believe we have some kind of regulation on that we aren't supposed to have large blinking neon lights on main roads. So yes, we need the planning and zoning department over there to police these facilities and warn them, have them remove them, and bounce it out. They gotta take them down. So it needs to be policed and make sure they're not doing it.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Blake?
I think digital billboards are tacky. I don't think they belong in our downtown. I'm okay with digital billboards along the I-95 corridor because the I-95 corridor is not scenic. But barring that placement, I'm not in favor of it anywhere else in historic New England, Milford.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Mr. German? No. Or Mr. Blake? Follow-up? Okay. Okay, next question, we start with Mr. Blake. We have questions on the new police station and the cost of it. Estimate of $45 million, I believe is what was written here. So there are concerns about do we need a new police station and the cost of it.
So our existing police station was finished in 1979, and according to our chief and a lot of other folks, it was obsolete on day one. I absolutely think that we need a new police station or need to enhance the existing police station. The figure of $45 million is not correct. It's significantly more than the $45 million figure. If it was $45 million for a total project cost, I think that we would have greenlighted it months and months ago, but it's significantly more than that. I'm ready to invest in the community, continue to invest in our police station. The good thing is that we have the best trained, best equipped police force, not just in the state of Connecticut, but in the entire nation. We're very proud of that. We are going to continue to look to see how we can reasonably enhance our police operation, to make it more efficient, to build what they need. But an 89,000 square foot police station would have been the largest in the state of Connecticut, or tied for the largest in the state of Connecticut with the city of Stamford. It would have been larger than Bridgeport and New Haven and Hartford, and we could not afford it. Or if we could afford it, it would have meant a significant tax increase for the next 20 years. We're looking to do something more reasonable, more Milford.
Thank you. Mr. German?
Well, I'm definitely in support of building some structure for the police department. I toured that, I talked to the police chief, I talked to the police commission. As the mayor said, in 1979 when it was built, it was pretty much obsolete when they moved in, and that was 40 years ago. But it's when you walk through the hallways, if you have two guys walking, you have to turn sideways so you get by. I mean, it's not a very efficient place. So if something needs to be done, it's way overdue. There's a huge question on the cost. The chief said it would cost a lot less. The mayor said it's going to cost a lot more. So it's somewhere in between there. I've built things in the past, and you can always scale things down or scale things up and hold it to a tight budget. And I think that needs to be revisited, and I think we need to decide on a tight budget and get the right developer, right designer. We don't need a Taj Mahal, we just need a good, efficient, new police station so that the police can do their job and, do what they do best to protect the citizens. But it's way outdated and it really needs a lot of work. And we do have a terrific police force and they really deserve that. And I think it's hurting them as much as it's hurting us, but we really need to improve on that. So, that's it, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Blake, follow-up?
I agree with Alderman German. I think that we need a new police department or to enhance the existing one, and that's the direction that we're moving in.
Okay. Follow-up, Mr. German? Okay. Next question, we'll start with Mr. German. Do you support the toll project that Hartford is proposing and implementing that will increase the taxation on the people?
Is that a loaded question?
Yes.
Absolutely not. I mean, we had tolls in the past, and it's just another tax on the people, and people are just constantly taxed to death in Connecticut. Once they have the tolls up, it's just going to start increasing every year because their budget isn't certainly not going to go down. So it's another tax, and it's an easy way to keep increasing that tax every budget season for the state of Connecticut. We see it going over and over and over again every budget season, and they're looking for more money, more tax revenue, because the spending is out of control. I don't see that changing anytime in the near future. So I'm strongly against that, but I don't think there's any way you're going to stop it in this state.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Blake?
I don't think anyone in the state of Connecticut is for tolls. A quick story, when I was in kindergarten, one of my kindergarten classmates at Meadowside actually passed away in the accident that led to tolls being removed in all of Connecticut roads, so it has never left a good taste in my mouth. But at the same time, I recognize that we still need to make investments in our infrastructure, our transportation. I think we need to find a way to do that, but no, I'm not a toll guy.
Okay, any follow-up, Mr. German? Mr. Blake? Follow-up? Okay. Next question, we start with Mr. Blake. Concern that we are in a bubble right now that's going to burst because we have not had significant hurricanes in the last couple of years. Is Milford prepared for the next Sandy?
We are more prepared than we ever have. Milford has more coastline than anywhere else in the state of Connecticut, 17.5 miles of pristine shorefront. It is one of our greatest assets, but at the same time, a huge vulnerability. And we have done much since Irene, 8 years ago, Sandy, 7 years ago, to make our shorefront more resilient, to put more of a buffer between Long Island Sound and our beachfront homes. But there's a lot more to do. We have projects all the way from Woodmont to Smith's Point on the west side to make sure that we have more protection than ever before. A lot of those projects are still going on. We've gotten a lot of grant funding to make sure that that happens, but a lot of the numbers that you're talking about is in the tens of millions of dollars, which isn't our biggest hurdle, believe it or not. Our biggest hurdle is getting permits and permissions from the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. It's not even the Army Corps of Engineers who also has to sign off. It's our local state DEEP. That is the biggest hurdle because of their philosophical bent. They do not want hard gray infrastructure protecting our coast. They want livable shorelines. But even the livable shorelines that they will permit come with so many hurdles that it's too burdensome to make sure that we have enough significant protection. We're working on other ways to make sure that the city is more resilient. Even things like the microgrid that we got a $3 million grant for to implement in our downtown area to make sure that those critical buildings, those pieces of infrastructure that we will rely on in times of storm when the grid goes down, it will allow those buildings to stay up and energized. Those are some of the things. Right now we have 10 CDBG, Community Development Block Grant Disaster Relief projects that we're working on. We have hazard mitigation projects that we're working on. We have completed some, at least 2, and we have 8 more, 4 planning projects just to finalize, and then we have a couple more construction projects to go. But it is always something that we are working on each and every day. Over the course of the last 8 years, there is no local municipal issue that I've worked on more than making sure that our coastline is resilient.
Can you repeat that again, sorry?
Yes. We've been in a bubble for the last few years without any major storms on the scale of Hurricane Sandy. What would you do? How prepared is Milford for the next storm?
Well, years ago when we had those 2 storms, they were the 100-year storms every back-to-back year after year. So hopefully we won't see them again for another 100 years. But I think Milford is well prepared. We always are. We always do what we need to do after a storm. I live on the shoreline. I see, that it's a much more frequent occurrence. The water, the high water tables, and just constantly beating up the shoreline. So yeah, I think we're prepared. We will be. We've had those 2 storms, and we've done a lot since that. But as far as the shoreline, we are losing our shoreline. Our 17 miles of coastline. There's a lot of residential areas. There's no beach left. In front of my house as well, we've lost all our beaches. We have that grant, and it was mentioned in Ben's report here recently that all these issues were solved for Crescent Beach and Gulf Beach and Wildermere Beach, or projects were completed. And I'm not really sure what he means by that, because there's absolutely nothing that was done at Crescent Beach. And I've talked to people at Gulf Beach and Wildermere Beach, and nothing was done there. So when a project is completed, I'm not sure if it's just they decided they're going to do nothing, and I'm not really sure what that means. But we do need a lot of work on replenishing our shoreline. And there's pipes and there's things that are broken that aren't protecting the water tables along the shoreline. So people are getting flooded on a constant basis, and that needs to be addressed. And we're spending money, but some of these people in some of these areas are just constantly underwater every time there's a high tide, full moon, high tide situation. So we really need to address that, especially along the floor line. Those are high taxpayers, and I think we need to do a lot more. Thank you.
Thank you. Follow-up, Mr. Blake?
Milford is second to none in terms of emergency preparedness. Our first responders are always preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. But we are doing a lot for our public infrastructure. A lot of the projects have been awarded. They're starting construction this fall. A lot of projects have already been finished. For example, Holly Beach, that was a project where we spent $5 million to re-engineer that beach to make it a low hydraulic type of sand. It's not a great sand to feel on your feet, but it stops erosion. And there's examples of that all the way down to the 70 miles of shorefront that we have. Unfortunately, there's an equal number of projects that we would like to engage in. We are having trouble with the permitting of a lot of those projects. Crescent Beach is one example. Wilderman Beach and Walnut Beach is another example. We have had a lot of pushback, and it's not just Milford, it's Fairfield, it's Guilford, it's Madison, with the state's DEP. Again, what they will allow is not going to protect us in any reasonable way. We are trying to do the best we can within the limits that we're being allowed.
Thank you. Follow up, Mr. German. Okay. We've heard a lot of talk tonight about business coming into Milford and brand lists and so forth. What is your plan, starting with Mr. German, what is your plan for the next couple of years, if you are mayor, to attract more businesses to town?
Well, as a small business owner in town for, like I said, 35 years, I have a good idea what business owners want and need. And so we really need to get out and talk to some of these people and see what they're going through. Downtown Milford, Post Road, New Haven Avenue. I see a lot of empty storefronts, a lot more than was there 5, 6, 8 years ago, and I'm concerned. But I don't think we have the best reputation as far as permitting, the whole permitting process. I think we need to be a much more business-friendly town so we can attract people and retain businesses. So businesses come and businesses go, but we want people to come here and stay here. We have some old family-run businesses, and that's great, but again, there's a lot of empty storefronts in town. We need to do a lot more to attract them. So definitely working with the planning and zoning and building departments, streamlining that whole process, try to speed it up so that people aren't spending a fortune 6 months, a year before they get open. Small business owners don't have that kind of money to hold out and wait, until the building department or the planning and zoning department can review all the plans. So all that really needs to be cut in half and streamlined and trying to get that whole process moving quicker. And we really got to be a much more business-friendly town so we can attract businesses. In the whole state of Connecticut, they're killing the whole state with the minimum wage and the new regulations. So we're battling with the state, and it's not easy for small business owners. So we got to do more of what we can here in town to try to keep them here.
Thank you. Mr. Blake?
The city of Milford is going through an economic renaissance. We have more businesses moving in right now in the last couple of years than we've ever had before. We have a 96% occupancy rate. That means that's the gold standard. But there are 3 things really to make sure that we do to attract new businesses. We keep the taxes low. Ladies and gentlemen, 4 consecutive back-to-back tax cuts. We make sure that we have a great, fantastic, super education system that's not just good enough, but we can really be proud of, which we do. That brings in families that want to move here. You see how we've been cited in the New York Times, in Bloomberg Magazine, in U.S. News World Reports, all these media outlets of national reputation. But to Dan's point about our permitting process, I agree. That's the 3rd thing that we really need to do to make sure that we attract new businesses. And when I became mayor 8 years ago, Milford building department, the permitting department had a terrible reputation. I see a lot of local builders here in the audience, and I think they could attest to that. 9 out of every complaints that landed on my desk when I first started had to do with the terrible building department, the lack of consistency, terrible customer service, the fact that things would take years and years to get approved. There has been a sea change, ladies and gentlemen, a 180-degree turn in our building department. That is my proudest achievement over the last 8 years. The fact that we went from worst to first in our permitting. The fact that we used to have a terrible reputation to now we have among the state's most building permits issued in a year. I think only the city of Stanford issues more building permits in a year. Milford has had an explosion of new businesses moving into town, but also existing businesses adding on. There is no better story than this one that we have to tell. We had the last 2 years over $100 million worth of new construction, permitted new construction. There's probably double that, but permitted new construction. So that is one of the feathers in Milford's cap. So, and that's something we're proud of.
Okay. Follow up, Mr. Gurley.
Yeah, I just have a question on a 96% occupancy figure. When you leave today, when you pull downtown, just look how many empty buildings are down there. If you just count how many buildings are down there versus how many buildings are downtown, it's a lot bigger percentage than that. And then along up the Post Road, we have the mall has a lot of empty space. There's, Wheelers Farms Road, there's a lot of empty space. So I just question where that number comes from. But we need to work harder to attract and retain businesses in town. And there's a lot of ways we can do that, and we will do that.
Thank you. Follow up, Mr. Flynn.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, may be the difference between Dan and I. When I drive through downtown, I don't see doom and gloom. I see our neighbors, I see our friends. I see a bubbling, vibrant downtown that really is the hub of our city. I see storefront owners and new businesses coming in all the time. There is no better example of a downtown that is thriving, a city that is thriving with business than the city of Milford. Ladies and gentlemen, this is something we can be proud of.
Thank you. Well, we've done that. Okay. The person writes in about Eisenhower Park and all the things that we've done out in Eisenhower the last few years, and we started with some place on this one. What are we doing, though, to preserve and utilize natural spaces in Milford?
So Eisenhower Park corridor, we are developing, you've seen the pickleball courts, the splash pad, the new dog park that really is the Augusta National Dog Parks. You see the old rustic barns at the Pilot Orchard that are going to be developed in arts and event space. You see a lot of development, but one of the things that we've also been doing is making sure that we open up our passive recreation, those beautiful open spaces for us to ramble in nature, and we have done a lot. For example, the Solomon property, approximately 100 acres of pristine land in Milford. We have just redone the entranceway in the parking lot, gotten rid of some dangerous buildings at 810 West River Street. I invite everybody to see the work that's being done. Actually, we're installing a brand new apron at that facility tomorrow. But by the end of the week, that project will be complete. If you look at the 41-acre Beaverbrook Walk, the boardwalk that burnt down a few years back, we got a $500,000 grant from the state of Connecticut, a steep grant, to repair that. That has all been completed. There is a 1,100-foot, linear foot boardwalk that is brand new. We are making that area between the parking lot on West Ave and the boardwalk 100% handicap accessible. That's one unique thing that we have that not a lot of other places have, that we have an ADA accessible pathway into the woods. We have just redone, with the help of Subway, the trails at Mondo Pond. Subway helped us preserve those and put down a whole bunch of new wood chips. We're also making sure that our beaches and our access ways are better than ever as well. So we've done a lot to make sure that access to those natural environments are well taken care of. And there's more.
Thank you, Mr. Gurman.
Can you repeat the question, please?
There have been a lot of new projects that have been done to Eisenhower Park. But what would you do to preserve the natural areas of Milford for hiking and other passive recreation?
Well, Eisenhower Park is a beautiful piece of property that we own in Milford, and there's some beautiful trails in there, and a lot of it's underutilized, but I think we take, part of it's completely ignored, but part of it is we have some good things in the tennis courts, the pickleball courts, the splash pad. But it is a beautiful park. Summerlin's a beautiful park. And the beaches, of course. I have a question on our new property that we bought a couple of years ago next to the golf course, 720 North Street, and we're building or the mayor's building a convention center. And spending a lot of money on this, and I'm not sure where the money's coming from or how much it's going to cost, but it's millions of dollars. So I'm concerned with what that is going to be and what that whole plan is there, and the aldermen have been kind of in the dark on that. So that is a concern of mine, where the money's coming from and where it's, and what it's going to be, who's going to pay for it, and who's going to run it. So that's a concern. That needs to be a little more transparent to us as aldermen. But we do have some beautiful parks in town. We have a lot of small pocket parks. Some are taken care of, a lot aren't taken care of, and that's a big concern of mine. We really need to take care of all our parks, and they really should be in really good condition, especially downtown, which is a very walkable place. We really want all those parks and areas on downtown to be, I think, should be really pristine. So, thank you.
Thank you. Follow up, Mr. Blake?
I think Alderman German is referring to not 720 North Street, but 701 North Street, where we're restoring some rustic barns into arts and event space. It's something that I had highlighted the last two states of the city back in 2018 and 2019. I talked about it. I met with Alderman German many times, including last January, when he brought out-of-town clients. Maybe it was a friend who wanted us to give her the property. I thought that was a weird backroom deal that he wanted to negotiate back last January. I still don't understand it, but obviously this is something that is stuck in his craw. So he's brought it up a couple times, but it's a project that we're moving forward with the state grants. It is going to be a great community asset. I'm still a little curious about what he wants to do with his client who he brought in, but we'll find out.
Follow up, Mr. German.
Thank you. First of all, it's not a client, it was an interested person that wanted to develop a wellness center there in the house up in front, because I assume the city is going to do something with it and not keep it empty. I'm referring to the huge space that there's a huge foundation that's already in the ground, and it's costing a lot of money, and we don't know what's happening there. So I just wanted to be more transparent, not only myself, but other people on the board of Aldermen and other people in the area have brought it up. So I'm concerned where the money's coming from, what it's going to be, who's going to operate it, and what's the cost going to be, ongoing in the future.
Okay. Next question. There's been discussion. I'm sorry, we'll start with Mr. German on the next one. There's been discussion tonight about affordable housing and legislation in Hartford tonight. But how do we keep Milford affordable for our young people to come back and live in town when housing prices are going up?
Good question. Milford is a great market, and it is a little more expensive. How do you get prices down? That's a good question. So there is a lot of small apartments attached to houses or duplexes where things are affordable, but there isn't. You got to look for them, and you got to jump on them when they're there. So Milford's a great community. There's a lot of apartments as well, but they're on the higher end. But you gotta shop around and jump on things when you can.
Mr. Blake?
to attract anyone to keep taxes down. We have 4 consecutive tax cuts in a row. But to attract millennials, you want to make sure that you have a vibrant community. If you read Bloomberg News, you saw that Milford, more than anywhere else in the nation, was the place that millennials are moving to most because we have some very cool things. Bustling downtown, shorefronts, great schools, all those attributes that make millennials want to move to Milford more than anywhere else. So I think that that thing speaks for itself.
Follow up, Mr. German?
Yeah, I'm not sure if he answered the question, how do you make houses more affordable, but I do agree it's a bustling town, and people do want to move here, they just can't, a lot of them can't afford it unless they have, you know, a really good job. They can't afford it, so.
Follow up, Mr. Blake?
Just that I touched on the fact that we had 4 consecutive tax cuts in a row. Milford is the most affordable community in the area by far. If you move to Milford, you're paying about half of what you would in taxes a lot of other surrounding towns, and you're getting more services, more bang for your buck than anywhere else. That attracts young people, it attracts old people. We are equal opportunity.
Thank you. Next question, we start with Mr. Blake. The Coast Guard flotilla building. What do you think should be done with that? What is your plan for it? What do you want to do?
First and foremost, back when I was a young kid, I got my voting certificate from Peter Van Brederode, who was the commander of the Coast Guard Flotilla number 73, and I still have it. It still allows me to operate a vessel in Long Island Sound and other places. I have a very soft spot in my heart for the flotilla. The last plan of conservation and development, however, did recommend that we look at that property as one to better utilize. The Downtown Development Committee that did a $150,000 market analysis of the area just a few years ago also identified that particular location to better utilize. We do have a $1 lease agreement with the flotilla. We've looked to see if we can maintain the same great services that they provide. They do provide great education for young voters or for folks that are learning to vote. They certify folks and give them a initial voting certification course. But whether they need to be in that space, the city of Milford does not have a lot of beachside or shorefront dining. I think that Costa Azul and the Yacht Club are the only 2 places in the entire city where you can get a hamburger and watch boats on the water. So we're looking to, again, partner. The other issue is that we had some communication issues with the Coast Guard flotilla. There was a time about a year and a half ago where no one on the executive board lived in Milford, and not many of the members lived in Milford. They refused to communicate with the finance department. They refused to give the W-9s and other forms and allow them to collect a grant. That has changed. We've had a lot better communication recently with the flotilla because they brought in a couple of Milford people. I think that is welcome. Back when I was growing up, the flotilla was all Milford. Unfortunately, they are now mostly folks that live in other towns and cities up Route 8. But long are the days when Ellen Jepson was the commander.
Thank you. Mr. German.
So, yeah, I have a question on what the mayor was doing that with that as well. They have a 100-year lease on that. They have 47 years left on that property. And yeah, the mayor was questioning or their information that they were supposed to provide to him so they can get their grant. We, as a city, grant them, I believe it's $10,000 a year to help operate that facility. And once we grant them as a city, we assume they get the money. And it was almost a year later that they came in front of our board again, and they had not received their payment yet. And they need that money to operate their facility. So that was a big concern. If they were supposed to get that grant, how come they didn't get that grant? And we as a board, when we vote on something, we assume that it's being taken care of, and it wasn't taken care of. So we just thought it was a strong arm tactic, trying to get them out of there to move to another location. But they have a lease there, a long-term lease. If they want to leave, then that's up to them, but you can't force them out of there. And we have a lot of empty space on the water now that could be used, commercial space. So I don't know why we need that space for them. So.
Thank you. Follow up, Mr. Blake? Okay, follow up, Mr. Sherman? Okay, thank you. Next question, we start with Mr. German. Much has been made about Milford's AAA bond rating, but aren't we just mortgaging our future and picking up higher interest payments now?
Good question. Our finance director has done a nice job over the years. He does a terrific job, actually. But I'm concerned with the amount of bonding that we've been doing. It's up 70, 80%, almost 100, doubled in the last 8, 9, 10 years. So those interest payments are growing every year. Our debt payment right now is $18 million a year. That's a lot of money every year that can go to other services. So as that increases, it really chips away at our city budget, and we can't keep heading in that direction. So at some point, we got to flatten out and start paying this stuff back. Interest rates are low right now, but they will go up in the future. And when they do go up, we're really going to get hit hard. Some people think when interest rates are really low, it's free money. It's not free money. You got to pay that back at some point. And I'm concerned with that big lump sum that's really growing. And it's really going to be a burden to the city in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Blake?
Well, if you look at the item that the rating agencies look at more than any other when they evaluate the fiscal health of the town, and they look at the total bond indebtedness, and the city of Milford has been singled out in the rating agency reports from Fitch, from Moody's, for the low bond indebtedness that we have. That's what drives our AAA bond rating, is the fact that we have such a low bond indebtedness. That being said, if you look over the last couple of years, the last 2 years, we've only authorized about $15 million in bonding each year. Back in the day, we bonded a lot more. If you look at like 2006, before I was mayor, we bonded over, or authorized over $100 million in bonding. That was for good, responsible projects. I'm not saying that that was bad government in any way, shape, or form. That was for necessary public infrastructure, sewers and the like. What I'm saying is that recently we have cut back on some of the spending that we have historically done, because we want to make sure that our bond indebtedness remains low. If you look at the projects that are now driving our annual debt service, it's not projects from the last couple of years that we authorized. It's projects that go all the way back to the 1990s that we are paying for now. These are 20-year bond notes. So that's what's driving our payment now. And the figures, unfortunately, that Dan cited, they were not correct in fact at all.
Okay. Follow up, Mr. Berman. Okay. Follow up, Mr. Blake. Okay. Next question, we start with Mr. Blake. Combines a couple of comments from people. One is, what can we do to make and make Milford a more walkable city for both economic and environmental advantage? And this is coupled with somebody writing in asking about making Milford more handicap accessible for the sidewalks. That the person needs the handicap ramps and so forth to be a pedestrian, and finds it lacking in Milford. Handicap access on the sidewalks and so forth, it's lacking in Milford. And if somebody else wants to just get out and do more walking, what can we do?
So I always say that Milford is the type of town, the type of community that you either have to walk or bike in order to really appreciate. And the focus over the course of the last 8 years in terms of our public infrastructure has been to make Milford a more walkable, bikeable town. You've seen that with new sidewalks, new pathways, new walkways, especially around the downtown perimeter, to our beaches and our parks. That has been the focus, and we're continuing to do that. We continue to do the curb cuts and handicap accessibility all around town. We have an annual grant each year through the Community Development Block Grant, where we spend, over $250,000 just for that, plus the additional amount that we either bond locally or receive in other state and federal funding to make sure that we have sidewalks that are safe, sidewalks that are passable, and you can bike and run on. Unfortunately, back when Milford was really developed, back 50, 60, 70 years ago, a lot of the developers put trees not away from the sidewalks, but right in the snow shelf, and those were not the right trees for the right places. So we have a lot of tree lifts that we're working on. Again, over 1,200 city streets, in almost every single street has 2 sets of sidewalk. So you can just imagine how much work that we have to do. We're chipping away at it at a greater pace than ever before, but it's still a heavy lift. We're doing what we can to make sure that our streets are safe for our kids, our seniors, and everybody to enjoy.
Thank you. Mr. Gurman?
We have a beautiful senior center over there, and you're right, there's no place for them to really get out and walk. There certainly could be something developed around that whole complex that they can get out and walk and do things. And of course, that's a big, strong point and passion of mine, is get people out, moving, exercising. People that exercise, you're going to feel better, you're going to be healthier, you're going to, require less of everything. And so that's a big passion of mine. Another goal of mine would be along the shoreline, the entire shoreline, having, again, clean streets, newly paved streets, so that people can bike, so they can walk, so they can run. We have a beautiful shoreline. We need to take more advantage of it, from Cedar Beach to, Crescent Beach and Woodland Beach down the other end. Some roads are redone, but a lot of them are in horrendous shape, and we really need to take care of that. Again, shoreline homes are paying a huge tax bill, so I think it has to be a top priority. And downtown, certainly there's some areas that we could do some handicap parking, and that's a favorite spot of mine. Constantly downtown, as most people know, at Cafe Atlantique. But there isn't any handicap parking there, and there should be something somewhere, but we're limited with parking in that whole area. So that's something we definitely need to work on.
Okay, thank you. Follow-up, Mr. Blake?
Milford will continue to make sure that our town is more walkable. It's one of the hallmark initiatives that we have enacted for the past many years. Our Public Works Department is going at it. We have contractors, we have a lot of effort, time, and resources being put into making sure that Milford is more walkable and more likeable. One historical note, the city of Milford up North Street 121 was the state's first official bike lane.
Thank you. Follow-up, Mr. Gurman? Okay. We're getting close to the end, gentlemen. Okay, next question, we start with Mr. Gurman. Tourism seems to be a growing industry in Milford. What would you do, what can be done to help encourage tourism?
Again, Milford has probably the most beautiful assets, and I think more than any other town in the state of Connecticut, with the beaches, the downtown area, the harbor, so many nice areas. I think a lot of things need to, I would certainly step up a lot of things downtown just to make it look, absolutely pristine. When things look really, really, really nice, you're going to attract a lot of people. We've done okay job, but really can be stepped up quite a bit, especially downtown. Post Road is a whole different area. I mean, there's a lot of eyesores along the Post Road, and that's really one of the busiest traffic areas, certainly in front of the Post Mall there. We have weeds 3 or 4 feet tall and curbs that have been missing for years. They're paving now, but I'm sure they're going to do nothing with the island in the middle. But a lot of these areas really need to be improved, and Milford needs to step it up as far as beautification and appearance. And I think that goes a long ways. Arts and tourism, we have a lot of great assets downtown. We have the Mac Center, we have the Milford Performance Center, some great music venues, and it's really starting to attract a lot of people. And I encourage, if you haven't been out there to go to some of these shows, please do, because they're a great value for your money. They're local, you don't have to go too far, and they seem to be putting on better and better shows every year, and more people are coming into town, either via the train or sometimes boat, or just driving into town, spending their money, and then going home. So I think it's something we really need to focus on and keep those people coming in. But we need to step it up as far as beautification and, I think everywhere downtown and along the Post Road needs to look really, really nice, in my view.
Thank you. Mr. Blake?
When I was growing up, a lot of my friends that lived in other towns and cities, the only thing they knew of Milford was the Boston Post Road. They knew the mall, they knew some of the shops and stores along Route 1. And they still have a thriving business there. We have 14 million people each year that visit the mall. But what we have done is really try to push out all that Milford has to offer. And we're doing that because Milford's the type of place that when you bring your friends in, you want to have them come move here too, after just one visit. And I think we've done that through all the work that we've done to make sure that our downtown is vibrant, bustling with shops and restaurants and theater and great arts, not just in the downtown area. If you look at Walnut Beach is absolutely thriving. There is this energy in Walnut Beach that is unmatched anywhere else. I see Wendy here, who is a big part of that contribution, making sure that the concerts are there every Sunday, the salsa is there every Thursday, or one Thursday a month, and you have so much stuff happening all across town, from Woodmonts to Center to each of our beaches, that people are coming in droves. Unfortunately, the secret is out, and at this point, we may have to keep a little quieter because we have such an influx of tourism in Milford. We started Discover Milford CT, which is a tourism initiative through our community development and our economic development. That has been met with a lot of support. We put out videos and other things to promote it, and it is come back with accolades not just from the state, but national economic and community development agencies.
Thank you. Follow-up, Mr. Berman.
I agree with Mayor Blake on Walnut Beach. It's a great organization down there. They've done a lot over the years and really have built up that whole area for with a music venue and just a lot of different venues down there. And that's what brings people together in Milford is all these different activities. So people want to come back. Once they go to one event, they're like, wow, you guys do this every week. And yes, we do all summer long, and it's a great venue. We just had a cool Porch Fest out in Woodmont, and we had a tremendous success with that. Everybody has a lot of fun. People come together for music, some camaraderie. A lot of friends have met and they haven't seen each other in a long time. Neighbors meet each other. It just makes for a great community. So anytime you get people out and mix them together with music, it's usually a good thing. So the more we can do with that in all areas of town would be terrific.
Thank you. Follow-up, Mr. Blake?
Look at all these national publications that are putting out articles. The New York Times just had one about a great road trip from New York City as a destination as our beaches. News Channel 12 just ranked Milford as the #1 place to visit at Walnut Beach for a day trip. We keep having national publications let out the secret that is Milford, and we have exploded with tourism really by just letting them know our natural assets, the history that we have in Milford, the quaint New England charm, as well as our glorious beaches.
Thank you. Last question, we start with Mr. Blake. Very simple question. How can we help the homeless in Milford?
Milford is a small city with a big heart. We have a lot of caring and compassionate people. We have the only shelter between Stanford and New Haven. We are a place that people of all walks of life flock to. We do a lot to make sure that those with the least resources have support. We've established an interdepartmental, interagency task force to address the issue. Because of the good work that we have done locally, I've just been asked by the CCM, the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, to chair the state's task force on homelessness, the first meeting of which is later this week. But we have to make sure that we maintain our charm, that we make sure that we provide those services, not just to sustain them, but to make sure that our homeless population has the resources to move forward, whether it's addressing substance abuse issues or finding more permanent places to live. I think that this task force that we initiated is doing a very good job to make sure that we come full circle of the homelessness issue.
Thank you, Mr. Gurman.
We have a terrific center, like Mayor Blake says, the Bethel Center here in town does a great job at providing food and shelter for some of the homeless. How many are actually homeless, or how many are just panhandlers and just collecting money? I think we really need to figure that out. I think the police and some social workers kind of address that. Well, you're always going to have that in town. But I think a study may need to be done if there is enough homeless people that do not have shelter or live in quarters. Maybe do a study and see if we can't either put something somewhere or expand on it Bethel to protect those people. But if there's a shortage in housing, something needs to be done to help some of these people if they truly are homeless. So I think we really need to determine who is really homeless and who is just trying to abuse the system.
Thank you. Follow-up, Mr. Blake? No. Follow-up, Mr. Gurman?
No.
Okay. We are now up to the point for closing statements. And the first closing statement will be made by Mr. Gurman.
Well, thank you, Mayor Blake, for the pleasant discussion. Excuse me. And thank you, Mr. Stowe, for hosting, and thank you all for taking the time to listen to us. Of course, the top concern of mine and everybody's is taxes, 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 taxes. I have a plan to honestly and effectively reduce taxes through increased efficiencies rather than kicking the can down the road by borrowing and bonding. The city's borrowing and bonding has increased significantly, and our pension funding has fallen behind. Debt payments are up to $18 million per year, and we are draining our retirement funds and cutting our taxes, or cut taxes and taking out loans for the future. It seems like small businesses are getting clobbered by the state of Connecticut under Democrat rule. I talked to many small business owners in town. They are now faced with a minimum wage increase, more taxes, and more regulation. How can they afford to stay in business? Again, we need to do more to attract and retain businesses and eliminate all the empty spaces and vacant buildings downtown and along the post road. My plans are to work collectively with small businesses to make their life easier and not harder. In a recent publication, again, Mayor Blake claims that the occupancy rate is 96%. I just have to differ just by walking around town and driving around town. That number doesn't seem correct. And again, with healthcare, this is our largest budget line item at $45 million a year. I know we can save potentially millions of dollars a year by making a shift to more proactive and focus on prevention rather than sick care. Healthcare is our largest city expense, and it will continue to rise if we don't address it. And we need, again, to fix our roads and infrastructure, especially along the shoreline. Many people use the shoreline to bike, run, walk. And a recent half marathon was done just at Gulf Beach this past weekend, and also the Focus on Spokes, which I mentioned, where hundreds of bikers were riding along the coast of Milford, and some of these roads are potentially hazardous, and somebody's going to get hurt. And let's do more to preserve our historic past and protect our old homes and old trees and add that value to our town. We've seen a temporary hold on 8-30G affordable housing, but it will come back, and I have a plan to combat it when it does. But it's temporary, and it will come back. And almost 60% of our total budget, which we haven't discussed at all tonight, of your tax dollars goes towards education. Milford is ranked 69 out of 200 school districts. Orange, for instance, is number 4. And we have a declining enrollment, yet there is no long-range plan. We need to have a long-range plan, and we need to do more to support our school system. And we need to do more to support our police department and the officers that work hard every day to protect us. I support spending money on a new police station instead of spending money on a new convention center that the mayor currently has in progress. Our station is outdated, it was outgrown from day one, and we need to know where our tax dollars are going, and we need to spend more money on renovating or building a new police department. I will preserve some of the sound financial principles that made Milford great, starting back from the listening days 30 years ago, while building on our future and maintaining our present city the best we can. My vision is a thriving, safe Milford community with a great education system, well-maintained and beautifully landscaped city with lots of new walkways and bike paths, especially along the shoreline and waterways. Milford will continue to grow and thrive thanks to people like you that care, and my vision and plan that will protect the past and move us into the future. I will bring trust, transparency, and fiscal responsibility back to Milford. Let's make Milford amazing.
Mr. Blake.
Thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming out this evening. Thank you for taking time away from your busy schedules to be here. Thank you for our moderator extraordinaire, Art Stowe, to the Plymouth Men's Club, again for hosting this annual election debate. Ladies and gentlemen, I do want to thank the people of the city of Milford, the citizens of the city of Milford, the voters of the city of Milford, the residents of the city of Milford for the past 8 years. Thank you for the trust that you have placed in me. Please know how humbled I am for that trust. Ladies and gentlemen, I will work tirelessly each and every day to continue to earn that trust. We have been through much together over the last years that I've been mayor. We have celebrated good times, victories, and successes. We have faced challenges together. But the citizens of Milford always rally. We support each other, we encourage each other, and to be part of this unbelievably special community, this great Milford family, is a true honor. And as I've said before many times, the position of Milford Mayor is both in good times and bad, without question, the best job on earth. And tonight you heard some positions from Alderman German and myself. But tonight I am here to ask for your consideration, your support, in your vote on November 5th. And I don't want you to judge my candidacy through rumor or through promises that I made or somebody else has made. I want you to judge my candidacy for mayor of this city based on my record, what I have done as mayor. It's easy to come up with ideas from 50,000 feet up in the air. It's a whole lot different when you're on the ground, in the trenches, where the rubber meets the road. Ladies and gentlemen, my record of public service is long and well documented. I know the city inside and out. I grew up here. I was born here. I was raised here. And now my wife Sandy and I are raising our kids here. And I want my kids, Carter and Caroline and Tucker, and all of our community's children, to know the same Milford that I knew growing up. The Milford that I know today, the Milford that I know we can realize tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you for coming out this evening. God bless you all. God bless the small city of Milford.
Again, thank you all for coming out. We've got two wonderful candidates to choose from, and everyone will vote on November 5th.